you see the truth behind the lies. You long to break free. Welcome, my digital friend. You have come to the collective channel to free your mind. Are you ready to exit the matrix?
Yeah.
In this episode, we talk with Andrea Firpo, the psychic cheerleader. She is focused on soul liberation and embodiment using her psychic and intuitive abilities combined with her background in trauma psychology. With our hosts, Joe and Christy, and joining us again is Bob from Exit the Matrix.
Hi, and welcome to our Twisted Universe. Today we're going to be talking to Bob from Exit the Matrix, and our special guest is Andrea Firpo, and she is the psychic cheerleader. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So how's it going? How are you doing in Portland?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I appreciate it, or whenever this plays, I guess.
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm really curious, how did you get your name Psychic Cheerleader?
That's really sweet. So I moved to Portland, Oregon in 2014. And when I came here, just getting to know other healers in the area, I did some research about some psychics, and I went to some body workers and some Reiki masters, and got into plant medicine there for a while. So lots of different things. When I first moved here, I was just trying to get to know my environment and get to know more people, and in the work that I was interested in and wanted to pursue. And so when I first moved here, I stumbled upon Miss Renee, who is in North Portland, and she is a pretty famous psychic here. And she gave me my first reading. This is way before COVID, so we did it in person, and she's fantastic if anyone wants to look her up. And so she was looking at my chart, and when she was reviewing it, she said, if I was going through hell, I would want you by my side. You are a psychic cheerleader. And I thought, at first I kind of laughed at her, and then I thought it was so funny. I started sharing it with all of my friends. And at the time, I wasn't doing everything that I'm doing now. I was still kind of just figuring out what I was doing. And I was in the pursuit of becoming a Reiki master, and also studying with a shamanism group, a local shamanism group here in Portland. And so the name just kind of stuck. Everyone thought that it felt really like a good moniker or encapsulation of what it is that I do and what comes naturally, or what I've been doing since I was a child. I just didn't realize that there was anything special or unique about it, because I didn't really have mentorship in that regard. And I was just kind of out there doing it and not realizing that it was a special ability or that I was gifted in any way. So
isn't that funny? Everybody's like, how are you walking around being a psychic and you don't really know? It's just, you probably already had it with you since you were a child, right?
Well, everyone does. I mean, we're all born psychic. The longer that we're here and the longer that we're conditioned to believe that we're not able to have these abilities, the more we lose them. So for me, I was, I guess, fortunate in a way that it didn't get completely shut down. And maybe that's, most of the Pisces there, but, I have a lot of Pisces in my chart, but intuitive abilities are very, very, they're subtle. And everyone expects, we're conditioned to believe that, like, a psychic, for instance, is, somebody that wears a turban on their head and has a magic crystal ball and has a tablecloth and can see things that I just have no knowledge of and have no access myself. Like, there's no way that I could come up with that information. I have to go to somebody else outside of me to get information. And it's a secret club, and you've got to be super trained to do it. Or, other people might have the impression of psychics are charlatans, right? That they don't really know what they're doing, or they're just trying to sell you something, or they're very vague in the information that they give you and all of that. And so we have very interesting views about what being psychic is, I think. And, a lot of the work that I do with people is trying to dispel that, or to help them loosen their resistance around that. I also, what was I going to say to that? I was on a roll there. Oh, that the intuitive abilities, right, are so subtle. We think that they're like our senses, in the sense that, our sense of smell is really strong, or our hearing is really strong, right? Or I can see it and believe it. But, there's another way to see things in our pineal gland, with utilizing our pineal gland, that we take for granted. A lot of us, certainly, for instance, have an imagination. And if I asked you to close your eyes right now and imagine a lemon, even if you, Christy, imagined it on a tree and Bob imagined it in another way, I mean, every other person's individual representation of what their imagination is, it's still using your pineal gland, but people don't see that as being psychic. And it's just through practice and through application that you're able to use that in a different way than most people walking down the street would, right? And that's a psychic reading. So people don't realize that is, imagination is essentially the basis, and it's easy to discredit when it is your imagination, right? Because you're just making it up. So a lot of people have resistance around the fact that they could have intuitive abilities, or they don't even know that that's what it is.
See, you have to kind of recognize that it's there. You have to become aware that it's there all the time.
It's there all the time, but you can shut it down, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, I hear a lot of people talking about being an empath.
Yeah.
And, it being an empath, you could say essentially is a ability, an intuitive ability. If you enhance that, that's clairsentience. That's the ability to clearly feel, right? To feel so much when you go into a room that you can tell that a bad conversation just happened here, and you can feel the energy in the room when you walk in as a child. And a lot of times our intuitive abilities, for people who come with a background of trauma and abuse, like an intense amount of trauma and abuse, their intuitive abilities are going to be really strong and pronounced, because the subtlety helped inform them and kept them safe in this world, in this third dimensional world that they chose to incarnate in, into that family, to get certain lessons, values, virtues, and, karmic lessons, to be played out while we're here. So, yeah.
That's an intense statement. You just,
Yeah.
Which part, the trauma and abuse, or the intuitive abilities and getting enhanced?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're a small child in a trauma situation becomes like a super empath, because
Right.
they have to negotiate
their environment.
Yeah. So it's born out of trauma that I don't think people really realize.
Yes, a lot of times it's a way to survive here, or a way to protect ourselves. And for instance, like, I mean, I probably have some pretty profound thinking around this, but I also believe that through the experience of being a child with not very good boundaries, if you weren't taught very good boundaries, right, you can invite anything into your space. Anything. You can invite anything into your auric field. And if you, let's say you do a meditation and you release something and you don't fill yourself back in, you can allow anything into your field. I mean, it's just an energy field, right? So, a child who doesn't have any mentorship around their abilities can also invite all kinds of stuff in. And my own personal opinion and experiences is that's how schizophrenia shows up, right? Because I've invited a lot of stuff into my space, and I don't have contracts around what is talking to me. I don't have boundaries around it. So for instance, when, I went to the School of Intuitive Living here in Portland and went through some clairvoyant training, right? I have a couple of spirits or spirit guides on my team that have been assigned to me, but those roles are very specific, and it's only in a specific time, and it's only through my, request that this is happening. So I've been taught good boundaries, good energetic boundaries around utilizing my gifts, right? But if that wasn't modeled to me as a child, because I didn't have that kooky aunt that everyone made fun of that was doing psychic predictions, or if I didn't have a mother who was like, a famous astrologer, or, astrologist, sorry, not astrologer, but, if I didn't have somebody in my family who, mentored this, then I'm not going to know how to use my abilities in a way that's safe or practical. And again, we shut them down because we go to kindergarten and we show up and we start talking about our imaginary friend, and our teacher who has been here 30 more years is like, Johnny, no, honey, the people's skin is peach. It's not green, like, don't be drawing that way, Johnny, and we shut it down because everyone's like, we don't see what you see. We don't believe you. Yeah. So,
I think I heard that the kids that are coming in now are even more psychic than, let's say, 20 years ago. Is that what you're experiencing?
And they're plug and play. Yeah. Like they're already like, oh my God, you guys, we're so glad we're here to help you. Yeah, because they came in waves, right? And so for instance, I look younger than I am, but I'm 49. So I could be considered the second wave of volunteers. The first wave of volunteers, those are all the people that we made fun of in the 70s, 80s, and 90s who were, considered kooky because they were predicting, the end of the world in 2012, and it was the end of the world, but we all misunderstood what that meant. And, so like, they would be considered the first wave of volunteers, Louise Hay, for instance, or somebody else of that caliber was kind of, out there with the machete paving the way through the jungle. And then my generation kind of came in and we were like, waking up, we've all woken up much later in life, right? Much later in life. Like I would say that I had multiple awakenings throughout my life, but the biggest, largest awakening was absolutely in like 2007, 2008. So I was like already in my 30s, right? So for me, it was much later. And I find that with generations now, like my daughter is incredibly psychic. She has prophetic dreams. She doesn't know how to, decipher what they mean or anything, but, yes, absolutely. Every generation behind us just has less resistance. And as humanity continues to evolve, and as our vibration is higher, as we receive more, solar energy, as our DNA gets upgraded, as all of those things happen, we are going to essentially, any babies that are coming here are really, really tapped in, or are in two planes at once, or, they are here to help us turn things around, right?
You think they have each wave coming in has more abilities and more awareness because the previous waves were gradually more awake and more open to it. And so, those kids didn't get a lot of that stuff taught out of them or conditioned out of them. And so then you create the environment for cultivating those abilities is getting better too as they come along. So
well, for sure, we're more open to it. I mean, think about just even the word Reiki. Christy, you mentioned you're a Reiki master, right?
Yes.
10 years ago, nobody knew what Reiki was.
Right.
yeah, got a lot of rolling
I
eyes.
used to tell people I was studying Reiki and they'd be like, oh, what's that? Now I say, oh, I'm a Reiki master. And like, oh yeah, I've heard really good things about that. And it could be somebody that's overworking at Nike, it's like at a coffee, conversation or whatever that's completely out of the ordinary. So, and maybe I'm a little insulated. I live in Portland, right? And we are definitely more progressive, right? But
Sure.
I'm just saying, just with the proliferation of people being attuned to it, it's being used in hospitals now, it's being used with nurses, it's being used in different ways that just wasn't making progress. And yes, I think that as we lose density, we are more open and receptive to more ways of healing ourselves, right? And we are open to healing ourselves in ways that for most of the world would be considered more Eastern methodology or holistic in nature, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm so glad that I lived in Portland for a long time because, yeah, natural medicine is for me for sure. I'm not saying there isn't a place for it, but if I could do it with an herb instead of a pill, you're sure I'm going to,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, Western medicine was developed for trauma. It is for a traumatic incident. Think of it as like emergency room care. Like ultimately I have a problem and I can't fix it any other way. I'm at the end of the tunnel and I can't see a way out. I've got a cancer diagnosis. Like I just broke my arm. I need surgery of some kind. Like that's how Western medicine really is amazing. I have COVID. I have, whatever it might be, something wrong with me that needs a fix. Or I've got a migraine and I need to take a Motrin right now to shut it down. That's what it's meant for. It was never meant to be preventative. It was never designed to be preventative. It was meant to, take a pill or, get it done as a last measure. And so, in blending, preventative medicine or care with a more Western medicine. That's the goal. I mean, we can't do away with penicillin or certain drugs. We need certain things absolutely to elongate our lives here. We've definitely benefited by it, and
Yes.
we've also not benefited by it. So it's learning a healthy balance. Like I tell people a lot, this third dimensional reality here, that we incarnated in is kind of like going to the circus and the county fair and an amusement park all at once. And, if you buy your ticket and gain admission and you walk down and you maybe get some cotton candy and you eat that, and then you have licorice ropes, and then now you've had ice cream, and then you go on the Ferris wheel, and then you go on the roller coaster and you throw up, maybe just don't overindulge. It's all here to be enjoyed. Feel free to enjoy it all, but just don't get lost. You got to stay connected in.
Mhm.
You gotta remember why you're here too, but you are here to have a good time for sure. It's very easy to get lost. Mm-hmm.
And do you think it's outside influences that are trying to maybe pull you away from your joy?
Oh, that's a really sweet question. Well, I mean, if we look at it that way, I'm not saying that there aren't outside influences that can pull you away from your joy, but really your joy is in you. So it never really gets pulled away. You allow something to pull you away from your joy,
Yeah.
right? So, joy is cultivated from within. All of your core feelings are cultivated from within. And that's not really empowering either, is to say that something outside of me is really in control of me, unless I allow it to be. And certainly I've been there myself. So I can attest to this personally, but yeah, I mean, certainly, there are things here that can pull you away from your joy. You can get really stuck in a story. I'm not minimizing anyone's story while they're here, who we were born to and all of the things that happened to us and everything that we experienced with everybody is very important. Absolutely. But it can all change. It all has the possibility of changing. I make 3,000 decisions all day long, and it never occurred to me that maybe I can ask for something more, ask for something different, or even it maybe has never been modeled to me, or I haven't had any exposure to that yet, or haven't run across that information, but it can all change. It always has the opportunity to change. So, I don't know. I don't know that anything really pulls you away from your joy so much as that you get distracted, and maybe you even put the pause button on sometimes too. Yeah, sometimes life gets a little too intense, and maybe, drinking is really just how you were taught to deal with your emotional regulation into your family, unless you realize at one point that that's just not working anymore, or your body tells you can't do it anymore, or you get a DUI and that slows you down a little bit or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drinking, people will turn to that just because it's what you've always been conditioned to to think is the normal thing going forward in your life. I mean, every commercial, even cartoons show the little characters drinking. And so it's like you've been brought up to know that, when you're stressed out, it's time for a drink.
Well, it's a socially conditioned response too, and it's old patterning, right? It's been around for a really long time. It's been around for a really long time, and a lot of generations previous to us have been drinking. So, we tend to not see it. Well, I guess I can't say that. I was going to say we tend to not see it as a bad thing, but there are people out there that see it as a very bad thing. I take that back. So, but yes, I would say that drinking out of anything is definitely the most socially conditioned. And then, probably at this point, marijuana is creeping up there too, depending on what state you live in here in the United States or where you live in the world, right? But that's definitely creeping up as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's stepping forward for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Because sometimes I need to mitigate my pain. And
I
if I don't have tools around how to mitigate my pain, then I'm going to look for something outside of me to help me with that. Again, that emotional regulation. If I can't handle how much pain I'm in, or how much suffering I'm in, or how much it hurts, really. If I don't want to look at the parts of me that I'm not proud of, or that really embarrass me, or have a lot of shame around, or I have a memory around that I really haven't addressed or cleared the energy around or done the work around, then I'm going to get really attached to something that helps numb that or makes it go away. Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot. Is that something I saw something that you work with trauma?
I do.
Wound patterns. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I come from a background of abuse, all three types. So that's physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And I am a strong believer that we've all experienced trauma at this point. No one has escaped trauma at this point, especially with COVID, or even just driving down the street and seeing an ambulance and seeing a body on the side of the road, right, being covered up, or going to a funeral. And there are plenty of things that are traumatic, right, that we don't attribute to trauma that we are experiencing, that are traumatic, that we store in our energy field, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Okay. Because we have those different layers of our auric field, we have to heal each of those layers. And that's how a lesson moves through us. Okay. That's how we actually finally let it go. So, yes, you could say that I have a lot of experience with emotional wounding, right? And trauma and abuse. And a lot of people have normalized what trauma and abuse might be in their life. I work with some people who occasionally are like, oh no, I grew up in a family. We all got along. It was all great. And my family was great. And then they do something called a post-traumatic stress index test with me, and they actually see how much they've overcome or normalized or not attributed to right? Trauma and abuse, because we never want to see our family or the people who did love us to the best of their ability, did love and care for us and take care of us and help us grow up. But we have to take responsibility for the fact that that's not the person who's upset. The person that's upset is the child inside of us who didn't get attended to in that particular moment or that particular memory. And there's some healing or there are wounding aspects around it or patterns of belief that I formed at a much earlier age that are still impacting me now when I get triggered. And I'm getting triggered all day long if I don't know how to manage that, or I've never learned how to manage that, or it's never been taught to me. So, I'm essentially walking around with a younger wounded aspect of myself all day long, and I'm holding their hand. And sometimes they're driving the front seat of the car, and then they hop back out and I get back in, and I might be, more rational. And the more rational part of me, the functional adult, might say, well, I'm not upset with my parents. That happened a long time ago. I knew they did their best. I can rationalize it all the time. But the person that's really upset is, the younger aspect of myself who shows up as either something I refer to as the ego state of adapted teen or wounded child. And so how that shows up in your life is, if you had a lot of traumatic experiences at a particular time of your life, and either it was in your teenage years or it was in your younger childhood years, and that is typically where you prefer to hop back to. And you just keep replaying that until you see that as something that you have work to do around, right? A lot of time the people around us see the work that we have to do, that we're just kind of playing it out until someone either brings it to our attention in relationship, or it gets so painful that I have to look at it, right? Because now I got a DUI, or, back to that DUI example, I'm not really addressing it unless I really have to address it, or I know that it's there. And so, I bring more awareness around that, and I help empower other people to do the work around taking responsibility for that, checking in with that, some somatic care about it, whether that's breath work or that's a meditation or that's, a way to self-soothe in some way, or, to constructively give feedback when I'm in a triggered state and what that actually looks like, communication techniques around that, or so we just kind of go in, and it's not like I do change people, but or help them change their lives, but I go in and essentially give you upgraded or updated tools. Like if you were on an episode of Survivor and you had a shovel, but I just handed you a brand new one, and maybe yours had a broken handle and this one's brand new, and I'm like, here, doesn't that shovel a lot better? And you're like, yeah, this is a lot better, thank you. So we're not like completely reinventing you, but I'm going in and helping you learn some new aspects of you, or learn some new techniques, or learning some new things that are making your life so much less complicated and so much clearer, and you have more embodiment in who you really are, as opposed to what the world needs you to be, or how you've been showing up in that relationship, or so we just make boundaries really clear for you, both energetically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. So yeah.
That's really cool. I find it incredibly helpful. The first time ever went to a psychic, we did some chakra work, and it was just on the sacral chakra. I didn't even know what I was walking into. I was like, oh yeah, let's just clear that out. That sounds
good. Do it.
Yeah. This is gonna sound, it's really personal. I can't believe I'm gonna share it here with everybody, but so we're clearing it out, and everybody's like, exes are coming up and stuff. And mine was my mom. And I'm like, why is my mom here? I don't understand this. Like, what the hell is going on? And the facilitator was like, well, probably because your mom has certain ideas about relationships and things growing up, she's put her opinions. My mom isn't a fan of men at all. And so, at all. And so growing up, that's all I was conditioned to think. And so like I kept storing all that. And so it was crazy. And after the class, I really felt like I'd lost 50 pounds.
I'm sure.
It was
Because
insane.
that's how we accumulate energy. I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, you can finish.
No, yeah, no.
You know, I mean, I like to say like you are a sponge. So for instance, if, you know, when you were born, if I handed you a sponge and I was like, hey, Christy, do all your dishes for the rest of your life with no soap, your sponge would get pretty disgusting, right? Over the course of your life. Well, that's what your aura, essentially, you're doing. You're just absorbing stuff all the time. If you don't know how to energetically protect yourself, if you don't know how to clear your energy, or you're never even thinking about that, you know, you're just kind of walking around essentially with like a coat of yuck all over you, with a bunch of memories and a bunch of pictures and a bunch of imagery and a bunch of feelings, and that's all just kind of energetically stored with you. And you will store that. You'll store what other people say. You'll store, you just, all of that. It's no different. Like I was just watching something on Instagram today about how we pick up cortisol. So like scientifically, we can agree that like when somebody gets stressed, cortisol gets released through their pores and into the air. And if I'm next to that person, even if I'm not stressed, my skin will absorb it and I will become more stressed. I will absorb the cortisol in my body. So now we're starting to see the science there, right? And make it visible. But that's happening on an invisible level all day, every day. Just by me giving you a hug, we are exchanging energy. Well, I hope that you're in a good mood, because guess what? I just got a coat of whatever you just had with you. If I sit on a chair and I haven't cleared the chair, everything that I've thought, everything that everyone's ever touched that chair, put it together, you know, moved it, everything is still there on that chair. Everything is energy. So the only way that most people will believe that is like doing through psychedelics, right? Then they can see like, oh, wow, that furniture is actually really breathing and moving. Yeah, it always was. It always has those layers, but like I can't see that with my naked eye. I have to do some work around that, right? So yes, we're picking up on energy all the time, and it is impacting us. And a lot of times our energy isn't even our own. We are picking up on other people's feelings, other people's thoughts, other people's stuff, especially if we're an empath and we're absorbing stuff at an unprecedented rate. So I'm not surprised that you were just taking on stuff for your mom, because your job was probably to soothe her and to listen to how horrible men were all day, every day. And, you know, you processed that for her and you were transmuting it constantly as a child, because that's, you know, what children do.
Yeah. I just don't think you're walking around trying to live your life and pay your bills and stuff, and you don't know why you feel so heavy. And it's not even just all your stuff, it's everybody else's and all their ideas and conditioning. Having energy work and going to somebody like you, I think can be profoundly life-changing. Have you had any like special clients that just really changed their whole life after sessions with you?
Come back soon for more with Andrea Firpo and how she has used her methods to help her clients.